Lupus LA would like to thank our generous sponsors for their support of the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Gemini Beauty believes in beauty for a cause, and in their case, the cause is lupus. The team at Gemini is changing the skincare game for good. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, and as always, I want to thank our sponsors for supporting this podcast and allowing us to tell incredible, inspirational lupus stories. And inspiration is the name of the game for Shanelle Gabriel. She is a poet, a singer. You've seen her on Def Poetry Jam, and I am really excited to have her here for the conversation. So welcome to the podcast, Shanelle.
Hello. So great to be with you here, and so great to thank you for having me to share my story.
Of course. So let's start with your story. I know you had a really vibrant childhood and were diagnosed in college, but tell me a little bit about, where you were headed and what your life was like growing up.
Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, in the East Flatbush section of Brooklyn, which is the little Caribbean. And my family, we're all from Trinidad. And I'm first generation American. And childhood was very much, I think this is such an old dated term, but I was very much a tomboy. I played all of the sports that the boys were playing. I was, very active. Even when I went to high school, I was so excited to take weight training classes. I played basketball. I did a lot of activities. I've always been active. And so growing up, my family, my mother that raised me, she was a nurse. And so a lot of times, I never went to the hospital. I just had kind of like good support there, except for checkups and things of that nature. But childhood was amazing. I loved growing up in Brooklyn. I'm very much a Brooklyn girl.
Yeah. And any symptoms at that time that were different from other kids your age or nothing you noticed?
Oh, no. See, that's the thing. I remember one time I had one situation where somebody actually, I think I was outside, and I guess now I look at it and it might have been beginning of Raynaud's, but I remember my hands being in the cold and them hurting so bad and like crying and talking about it, and everybody just thought I was being dramatic. But I think about that, and I'm like, wait, that's a symptom. Later on, and I guess when we talk about my diagnosis, that'll come back up. But I had like very few symptoms, if anything. But that was the one thing as a child that I noticed, and that might have been 5th grade.
And were you also an artist too, or is that something that came later on?
Oh, I forgot to mention that part. Definitely, I was a singer. I grew up in church, and growing up in church, my sister was the choir director, which meant I was forced to be a part of the choir. But there I developed my love of singing. I'd help her teach parts and all 3 parts and soprano, alto, and tenor. And I developed this passion for music and for writing and reading. So it all ended up panning out being a part of my story of who I am now. But yeah, I grew up very much a creative and loving lyrics and words and music.
So you had this incredibly well-rounded childhood. I can just sort of picture it in Brooklyn. I'm from Connecticut, so I know, I lived in New York for a long time. And so I get that feeling. So then you go to college. Tell me about sort of what was the plan? What were your dreams? Where were you headed?
Well, by my freshman year, I kind of gave up on trying to be a professional singer because I just, the music industry was whatever it was and is.
Right.
But I just said, hey, maybe I'll go and become an A&R. And so I interned at record labels. I tried to do college promotions for different labels. And I was a communication arts major. I knew I liked to talk. We had a radio station, so I was the head of the radio station. Eventually became the station manager. I was a student body president in college. I was the choir director for the school choir, the college choir. I sang the anthem at athletic games. So I was just very, very active. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha. I'm in the sorority. I did all of these different things. And I was just really pretty popular.
I would imagine you're pretty popular with all that going on. Right. So tell me where the shift happened. What was the first thing you noticed?
So my sophomore year, maybe the second semester, I started having really bad headaches when I'd fall asleep regular, and it would just wake me up from sleep. And it was devastating. It was just like, it'd be hurt so bad I'd cry. And I went to the campus doctor, who didn't know what to look for, and to be honest, I think the hard thing about lupus is that, so many things you can present them by themselves and they don't look like they're connected. So I just told her I had this headache, and she says, oh, maybe the heat is up too high and you're having a sinus problem. So I just, I'm never, once again, none of my family members have ever had any real chronic illnesses. So I never even thought to look at this. So that was the first thing that I noticed. Then I just realized it was really hard to wake up this morning, and my joints were really stiff. And I remember like laying there like, okay, get up, Shanelle, get up, get up, and trying to will my body to move. But it was
because you had a lot to do. I mean, there's a lot of activities you got
gotta
going on.
go. So it was just really, really challenging because I'm trying to get moving. I don't know that this could be something. It's the furthest thing from my mind that it should be a sickness. I'm like, I'm just tired. I don't know why I'm so tired, falling asleep everywhere, and, just noticing I'm achier. My roommate had to pick my bag up for me one day and put it on my shoulder. And she said, Shanelle, I think you should check that out. I'll figure it out. It's probably, maybe I just heard it picking something up. I made excuses. I couldn't donate blood for the blood drive, things like that you just don't put 2 and 2 together, or 4 and 1 together.
Right. Yeah.
So, that was where it pivoted. I started having these symptoms.
And then what made you say, okay, this is too much. I got, time for a doctor.
So I got back from, I finally did. It took a while. Okay. Yeah. I won't even lie. I definitely tried to ignore everything and just like figured I was just really exhausted from the semester. It was like my first semester on the dean's list. Like I really did a good job that year. And I went home. I'm like, hey, I'm just tired. I'm going to sleep all day and just maybe that'll get me back to normal. But I was combing my hair. And it's funny, I have a poem called Vanity, which literally outlines my diagnosis. And that's the reason it's called Vanity. I lost hair. That made me go to the doctor.
There you go. Right. Okay. Oh, you want to do the poem for us? You can do the poem for us.
You want me to do the poem for you?
We have never had a poem on the podcast, so I'm ready for it. If you're ready for it.
I'm always ready. So
let's do it.
Well, I guess we'll start from the beginning. This is Vanity. And it's a part of my second album called Aim High. And it goes a little something like this. If it wasn't for vanity in college, I don't know where I'd be. See, I was achy and sleepless with migraines all week. Still, I continue to keep on going. Class from 8 to 2:30. BSU meeting at 3. Dance practice at 4. At 5, I have to uphold my student senate presidency. Sorority meets at 9. Study from 10 to 3, 7 a.m. My day just rewinds. And that was just Monday. Party, sneaking a few conversations with every new guy I was talking to. See, this is the marsala that makes up the stew of the average college student. See, I was no different in every organization. I was Black and somehow in charge of the Latin American Student Union. I mean, they asked. See, stress was like my best friend, and I thrived in confusion, ignoring the weight that increased on my shoulders by the tons. Mornings got harder. I attributed it to me aiming to go farther than the average sophomore. Joints, they were swollen and sore, must be from dance practice. They say excuses are the tools of the incompetent, and I was foolish to think I could be so negligent with my body and think that all these symptoms were somehow irrelevant. It got so bad one day that I walked with a limp. So yeah, something was wrong. And I saw butterflies, not like the Mariah Carey or the Michael Jackson song, but I saw a mark on my face. Didn't matter. The semester was over and I was home and back in my mom's place. Like I said, if it wasn't for vanity, I don't know where I'd be. See, I was simply glad to be home, getting ready to go out. And now, I had my nice outfit on, looking all nice and grown, went to comb my hair. And then I realized that a patch and another patch and another patch weren't there. Then he had me at the doctor the next day, said, "Doctor, I have some other complaints, but they can wait. Take care of this. Take care of the exterior like most people nowadays." And the doctor had this baffled look on his face. Did some blood tests, put a hat on, and I went on my merry way. And a few weeks later, the doctor said, "Shanelle, have you ever heard of lupus?" I said no, and he proceeded to say that my immune system was too strong in attacking my own body. And much to my dismay, I had to figure out how I could fit this into my schedule. Can you believe I still went to work that day? All for vanity. I refused to see that overworking myself so as not to appear ill to others could have eventually ended my many responsibilities early. Well, a few months later, my body, it made me rest, because lupus is a disease that flares up in times of stress, and I was constantly pushing it as if fighting my humanness. Well, this machine, it broke down. Hospitalization and the possibility of death forced me to do less. But see, it put things in perspective. Because life is about more than just meetings and deadlines. I'm not a millionaire. I only have one lifeline. And if it flatlines, I don't want to have any regrets. So I vow to live every day as if I have 24 hours left. I'm an artist, an alchemist, purifying myself every chance that I get. I've learned to accept experience as the past and the present as the gifts. So for all the people that didn't see the sunrise this morning, you better enjoy it. Value your health and love life. No matter how many miles you go, don't confuse neutral with drive, and know that sometimes you have to bare your teeth in order to finally be able to smile. So my vanity will sustain me. God helped me to believe in me. Can't you see? Lupus can't hold me. I'm going to keep climbing walls like an ivy. Trying to stop me is in vain. Like an IV tenacity, it flows through my bloodstream, and I'm reaching my goals no matter how hard it seems. But God first, then myself, and then my family, because can't nobody love me if I don't love me. And being gassed, being conceited, it's not cool, but nothing's wrong with a little bit of vanity. Because me loving myself, well, that's the beginning of my testimony. Thank you for allowing me to share that with you.
Wow, you did the whole podcast. That was amazing. You definitely win the award for best way to tell your lupus story. No question.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. And it hit so many notes. It hit so many notes for me. Thank you for sharing that. I'll tell you what, we're gonna leave it there. I'm gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna go through the rest. So thank you for sharing vanity with us, and we'll be right back after this message.
Please visit our online store at lupusla.org. By purchasing Lupus LA products, you are directly supporting lupus patients and their families. For more information, visit lupusla.org.
Welcome back to the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. We're talking to Shanelle Gabriel, who just dazzled us with one of her poems about her diagnosis. And so what struck me there, obviously, that moment where you lost your hair and that sent you to the doctor. So tell me a little bit more about how it hit you when you actually got that diagnosis, when those blood tests came back, and did it take a little while to have this realization that yes, you did have to slow down this incredible life that you were leading?
So I was I'm the type of person, I don't freak out until you tell me I'm supposed to freak out. And so I remember being diagnosed, and I was comforted by the fact that it was like, okay, I'm not making this up in my head. These all make sense. And so I left there. I was told what medications I'd have to take. And so I was just like, okay, go back to living my life. And I told somebody, I really did go to work through that day, like right after being diagnosed with a chronic illness. I went to work, and my coworker knew, what I've been dealing with. And she was just like, oh, so what did they say? It's like, oh, I have lupus. And she covered her mouth and said, oh my gosh, my aunt passed away from that. And now that was like, wait, oh, this is like serious. And the only person I knew at the time was Mercedes from Next Top Model, who had
Yes.
that was
No Mercedes.
the only
Yes.
time I'd heard of it. And later on, I knew who Jay Dilla was, the producer, but I didn't, know that's what he had. So I went home and went to my Encyclopedia Britannica, because this is 2004. And I opened it up,
Right.
and of course it's updated. It's
Oh,
like,
I can only imagine what that said.
oh, it said the prognosis is death.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I was very scared about it. But I also said, well, they didn't tell me I'm going to die, so I guess I'm okay. And I went back to school, and it wasn't until I got really sick over the Christmas break. I went back to school. It was a struggle. I didn't tell anybody, because the few people that told me started coddling me, like, are you okay?
Right.
You need a drink. And so I kept it to myself. And I went on my first day of an internship at a record label. I was in the marketing department. First day, I left because I had chest pain. And that was my first hospitalization. That's what it ended up being. I ended up going for pericarditis. My first of a few.
Yeah.
And so that was when it really hit me that, wow, okay, this is something that I actually have to pay attention to. And that was probably a really hard, very sobering moment for me about being diagnosed.
And so what made you, because I know you pushed through, tell me about junior and senior year and how you got the fortitude to really finish your degree.
Well, I had to modify, and I think that was the hardest thing. So I started writing Vanity then when I was in the hospital. And it was, what are the most important things to me? For that time, up until then, I felt like I had to prove to everybody that I was somebody through all of these things. I had to be a leader. I had to be everything to everyone. And I couldn't. I was just like, okay, it's either this, either being hospitals, possibly not coming back to school if I get, really sick, or I have to modify. So I left a bunch of the organizations I was in. I dropped out of dance because that was definitely the hardest one out of everything. Modify. I used to work out a lot. I modified what that looked like. It was less sprints on the treadmill. It became walking, and it's just trying to find low impact ways of keeping mobile. And taking my medication seriously. I wasn't always remembering to take it. I tried the whole, maybe I'll just go vegan and just do juices and not take my medication. And that's probably what got me sick again. So it just meant that I had to really, really focus and fine tune like what I wanted to do. And by my junior year, I started performing in poetry shows. A friend of mine would host, and then I got bit by the poetry bug, and that became such an outlet for me to just kind of be creative and to express the things that I was thinking and feeling. And I think that really was helpful. There's another poem about me having lupus. It's really, really dark, but it helped me get through it. It helped me really be honest about how.
Okay.
I will never share that one.
Yeah. No, all right. I was going to say we could link to it as a bonus content, but
I never shared it. It's really, really depressing, but it's how I felt.
Yeah.
And
tell people. And I think it sounds like you had to sort of make some decisions about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you sound like the person who said yes to everything and all these life experiences. And I would imagine your diagnosis sort of, you really quickly figure out, okay, what's really important? Like, what are the things that really give me passion and give me, zest for living? And how do I tailor my post lupus diagnosis life to maximize my effect in those areas? Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the thing that I feel like I know so many out of my friends that have lupus through the work that I've been doing around advocacy. None of us we were all like type A. It's just so interesting. And for a lot of us, that was the hardest part of it. It was like trying to like detach our titles and accomplishments from who we were. And so it meant that I had to really buckle down and be like, what are the things that are important to me? And for me, it became poetry. That was around the season when I said, okay, I think I really want to be an artist. If that's what I want to be a creative. And so that made me, I needed a bunch of credits to graduate. I was done my major stuff. So I minored in business management. I needed a bunch of credits. So I minored in business management so that I could manage myself as an artist. And, I really was poured a lot into it. I graduated, on time. Which I'm so grateful for. I know I'm still an active alumna, but it meant a lot to me to leave college, to be able to graduate. No one knows the times that I was in so much pain. Very few people on my campus, and I knew everybody that knew the times I was limping from class or holding my chest because I had pleurisy and it was just really challenging. So it made me really have to refine, like, what do I want to do? Do I want to just go and get my master's in HR because it's a secure job, according to my mom? Or do I want to do the things I care about? If I ended up, and I thought this, like I think the second hospitalization I had, I remember thinking, like, if I get stuck here, God forbid, I get stuck in this hospital, what regrets would I have? And I was like, oh, we're not going to do that.
And how was your family during this time?
It was challenging because nobody's ever been sick. It was very hard for them to come to a place of acceptance at first. My stepmom kept kind of saying, oh, you just need sleep. It was very, very challenging. I had to take her to the doctor with me and like have her like sit there. And I think that was when she kind of finally said, okay, this is your illness. She thought I was just too busy. I needed to sit still,
Right.
And my mom's like, for me, it's like, you're haunted. If you're haunted, moving around too much, like, you're haunted, sit yourself down. And it was more than that. But I think it took a second for my family to accept it. My friends had some trouble too. They thought I'd started going to poetry shows, but poetry shows would end at like 9 o'clock.
Right.
They'd be out partying till like 2, 3, and they thought I just didn't want to hang with them anymore. And I was like, no, I can't hang like this anymore. Like, I can't get to a club at 10 p.m. anymore. And so it was a lot of me also learning how to communicate with them, what was going on and what I was feeling, and then really understanding what it was like. And that was a hard conversation to have because I kept it to myself so much.
Do you realize now that sharing it gives you more, not just sympathy, because I understand that problem when you tell people, oh, I'm not feeling well, because I do the same thing. I don't really talk about my symptoms on a daily basis. But then when I do say, oh yeah, my chest is hurting today, it's like alarm bells go off and people start, so it is a balancing act, I think.
Yeah. But I think, it's a matter of like, I have friends that are caretakers. A lot of times people just give my cell phone number out to people that get diagnosed. Like,
right.
My friend
me too.
Oh, you too? Okay.
Oh yeah, all the time.
All the time. So, or caretakers, like, my daughter has it or my friend has it. Like, they'll reach out, like, how do you want support? And I usually say, ask them. I think that sometimes, the thing, it's just, telling people what you need. Like, as much as I know that you want to be around, but this is what it needs to look like. Can we do brunch instead of the party? Can we do, can we do other ways that we can gather? Can we do slumber parties so I can just go to sleep over that?
There you go. That's a good idea. I like that one.
Yeah. It's
So tell me about your getting involved, your advocacy. What made you want to take that next step to working with lupus organizations and sharing your story?
So I mentioned I started writing that poem in the hospital. I didn't perform it for like another year or two. I still was like not telling anyone that I had lupus. I was at that point in time, I was already touring. I did HBO's Deaf Poetry Jam. I'd done a promo for the NFL draft. I started doing, I had a lot of buzz going on, and I would perform in front of these big crowds, and I like never touched that poem. And then one day I had a feature at, there's a really that's a historic poetry spot called the New York Poets Cafe in New York City. And I was asked to do a new poem missed my set. And I just happened to have it. I said, I guess I could do it. And, I'm just like, oh, I'll just read this poem. And, it got such a good response. But more importantly, afterwards, people came up to me, like made a point to come up to me and said, I have lupus. My aunt had lupus. Or like somebody else was like, my sister has lupus right now. Or my cousin just got diagnosed. And it was just so many people. And I was like, oh, wait, I'm not alone. There's other people. And it made me say, I guess I do need to perform this. Maybe this is something that's helpful for people like me who think that they're alone. And so I started performing it more. And then one day, somebody that was associated with, I think it was at the time, the Alliance for Lupus Research, that's what they were called. Another lupus organization heard me do the poem or saw it somewhere online. And they asked me to do it at the walk. And that's when I kind of just started meeting other people and learning about like what was really going on. I knew the challenges I faced as a patient, when it came to insurance and healthcare and trying to navigate, the Affordable Care Act. I couldn't get health insurance because it was a pre-existing condition and I had a job. And so all of these things were like, oh, this is what you all are talking about. This is what people are doing. People are going to the Capitol to advocate. How do I do this? And that's really what led to me starting to advocate more. And it ended up being just a really important part of what I do, is not just the performance of it, but really educating people on what lupus is and why it deserves a lot of support, why, people can look amazing. We both, we look great. And no one will not see that that people with lupus need support and need and real help.
And how is that, speaking out that advocacy, how has that helped your personal health and your diagnosis?
It helped me because it connected me to so many others. I think that if anything, whether bills get passed or things like that, it's just really helped me connect to so many people that just want to speak up and say what's going on. And also, I feel like a lot of times, even in my art, this is something that's a common thread. For me, a lot of what I create and what I do is in hopes of giving others what I didn't have access to, when I was diagnosed. I was lucky enough to be diagnosed fairly quickly, but I knew so many people that took years to get diagnosed. I think from time, it was maybe a year. I know people that took a long time. So how do we help other people with that? I do a lot of advocacy around diversity in clinical trials and the importance of that. And that's a very passionate, I'm very passionate about that work. And I've been on clinical trials myself, and I'm on a drug that I was on a clinical trial for, so how do we make sure that people have access to these possible treatments that they need? Those are all that affected me, impacted me, not having options. So it helps me, I guess, because it makes me feel like it brings me hope. The work that I do brings me hope, and hopefully brings hope to others.
Yeah, that's amazing. The clinical trial aspect has become such a big part of these discoveries, and these drugs are moving so fast, but they get hung up because they don't have enough people to participate. And so I appreciate that advocacy because it's so important, especially the diversity aspect, to really make sure all the populations are covered, especially lupus, because it does affect so many more African American women. So that that's such a really important thing you're doing. So tell me, what's next? What's next for Shanelle? Where are you headed?
Well, right now I'm just doing some writing. Working on my first manuscript. I'm working on a few musical projects with some folk, and I'm just continuing to talk more about what it's like living with lupus, and just try to keep living a life that shows people that even if you have a diagnosis, you can still live a full life. It just might not look like what you planned in the beginning, but I could not. I also, in the same breath, could not have imagined that I have been and done so many things. And I don't know if I wasn't diagnosed, if I would have had the courage and the determination to do all these things. So I just want to keep doing that. I'm also doing a lot. I've done a lot in arts education, and I was previously the executive director of a really great poetry nonprofit here in New York City that serviced in the country. So I'm doing a lot more educational consulting and supporting people creating programs for young people, because that's my other thing that I really am passionate about. So those are the things, and just
you're still so busy.
well, I love it. I'm self-employed now. This is my business.
There you go. Exactly.
So I can actually take days and take time. So I think that's been the thing that's been helpful. Is really remembering. It's a cycle. It's like forgetting and remembering, and just knowing to take breaths. I'm going on vacation in a few weeks, so I'm excited.
Perfect. Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. So Shanelle, thank you so much for sharing your story. I love it. I love you. I think you're really an inspiration, and thanks for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.